Alright, I want to show how to do an ICord on the Incredible Sweater machine or any of these bond type machines. You can do ICord alone, and there's other videos showing how to do it on most knitting machines. The Incredible Sweater machine does not have levers on the carriage like the LK150 or most of the flatbed machines that have been made since the 80s have some sort of a lever on the front or the side of the machine to tell it to slip the stitches that are in work. And that would go a lot faster on the bond if we had that, but we don't. You can pull needles out to hold instead, but then you have to put them back in work. So we're just going to do this completely without the carriage. So here is my little sample that I did with the ICord bind off, and that's what I'm going to be doing today. And it gives a really nice firm edge. It's a little bit stretchy, but it doesn't stretch much at all. So it makes a nice hem. It's got a little bit of weight to it, and this piece has actually been blocked, but it's not as evident on the purl side as it is on the knit. But you can do it in a contrasting color. You can do it with a heavier yarn, just whatever you want to do. Okay, this is my little sample. I'm going to refer to the yellow as my waste yarn, and I'm going to pretend like where the blue starts, that's going to be the hem of my sweater. So we're going to be hanging these blue stitches onto the needles of the ICord. So I want to just E-wrap. I'm going to do a double E-wrap because by doing the double E-wrap, I'm going to be also knitting the first row. And again, we're not using the carriage at all. So I'm just going to do an E-wrap on the first needle. I'm going to come around the second needle and pull the first needle back and pull a loop through that E-wrap. Go around 2 needles, pull a loop through that stitch there, and the last one we just pull it through. And I'm just going to put one of my little homemade weights on here to weigh that down. I could wait till the next row, but I'm not using the carriage at all. So what we're trying to do is bind off these live stitches as we knit the ICord. So if you want to just knit ICord, just eliminate the part where I'm talking about hanging your garment onto those stitches. With ICord, even a little ICord machine, or if you're hand knitting, you're always knitting in a circle. And the only way to do that on a flatbed machine is to only knit from one direction or the other. So you would knit needle 1, 2, 3, and then you'd come, the yarn would be pulled across, and then you 1, 2, 3. So again, the other machines are more automatic than this one is, but it's still not too slow. It still goes pretty fast. All right, so you pull out your waste yarn to where you don't miss that first blue stitch right there. So we're going to be picking up all these blue stitches as we go. We don't want to miss any. So I'm going to grab that first stitch on there, and I'm going to hang it in the hook of the first needle. So there's now 2 loops in that needle, and I can put weight on that if I need to. So what I want to do is put my thumb there and pull all those stitches back behind the latches. You can go all the way out if you want to, but you don't need to. And I'm going to come always under all 3 needles and through the hooks. So when I pull this back, I want to make sure that those latches close over my new yarn and the stitches are pulled through evenly through those. But you see, I had trouble and I ended up making them too big, so I made myself some little gauges. You can cut them out of cardboard, make it the width a little bit bigger than the width of these 3 needles, and you can make it the depth that you want to stop your yarn. So if I'm using really fat yarn, I would want this 22 millimeter, but I may want this 25 millimeter, which is probably about the perfect size for my stitches, just depending on your yarn. So you make yourself a little cardboard piece to fit in there to keep yourself from making the stitches uneven. So I've stitched, that was 1 row stitched. I stitched from left to right. So now it's time to hang the next loop, so I'm following this waste yarn into the next loop. Pull the needles out, pass the stitches, pass the yarn under all three and into the hooks. Now I've got my little gauge back there. It's going to stop me from going too far. So now I can't go back any farther, so I just pull my knitting down. Pick up a stitch, pull the stitches out, and then knit. So we're just knitting by hand. I find it easier than even hand knitting. Even though I don't have the automatic carriage settings on this bond, it's still, to me, easier to control than hand knitting and trying to do an ICord bind off. And plus I like gadgets, I like these machines, so whether they're automatic or not, I like playing with them. Got to make sure those latches are open. My cord moved on me. And when you're pulling this yarn over, you can pull a little firm because that's going to close that I-cord. Just be consistent on that. Alright, I'm going to continue till I get to the end of the row, and then we'll take this off of the machine. Alright, I just got 3 loops left. Just follow my waste yarn, and it's going to be attached to that tail, so it's going to be a little bit loose. I can hang a clothespin on there, which I think I will, because that's going to pull out a really big stitch if I don't. Alright, so I'm just going to do a simple bind off here. You can use any kind of bind off that you want because it's just 3 stitches. It's not going to be a big deal. And don't split the yarn like I did. Alrighty. Alright, here we go. Now you may have used ravel cord. I say it in a lot of my videos. I don't use ravel cord unless I absolutely have to. So as long as the yarn is easy to cut, then I don't worry about ravel cord. So I'm going to just make sure I'm not cutting my blue yarn because that's my project. The yellow is my waste yarn. I'm going to go to the loop that's at the end of that first row. Here's your beginning tail. Here's the end of the row, the very first row. Make sure you're only cutting waste yarn and nothing else. And that way you've released the first row of the waste yarn. So pull that tail through, and if you split the yarn in, you may have trouble pulling this out. That's why ravel cord could be better to use, but again, so there's your I-cord bind off. And the stitches are pretty even because I used a little gauge to help me do my stitches evenly. If you were doing just regular I-cord, you do the exact same thing, but you don't have to hang your project on there. So give it a try and see if you like it.